Hello, everybody. Welcome to the regular business meeting for the District of Squamish for Tuesday, May 20th. Holland Squallen, Clis Tuknut, Clas Squamish Okmeo. As always, we're gathered to do our work today on the traditional unceded territory of the Squamish Nation. Please be advised that this council meeting is being live streamed, recorded, and will be available to the public to view on the District of Squamish website following the meeting. If you have concerns, please notify the corporate officer present at the meeting. Can I have someone move adoption of, and just, we have an amended agenda before us, so can I have someone move adoption of the amended agenda? Moved by Councillor French, seconded by Councillor Hamilton. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. So our first order of business is a proclamation request from Pacific Salmon Foundation. Sorry, we've got Tracy Green here to present to us on this. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Hello, Mayor and Council. I wanted to thank you for the opportunity to present to your council this evening. My name is Tracy Green. I'm the Marketing and Development Manager at the Pacific Salmon Foundation. Before I begin, I did want to acknowledge that I'm here on the unceded and traditional territory of the Squamish Nation, and that salmon have been an integral part of the Squamish culture for time immemorial. So this is significant to the discussion this evening, because I'm here to request that the District of Squamish proclaim June 1st Wild Salmon Day. Just for a little bit of background, Pacific Salmon Foundation is an organization, British Columbia organization solely focused on the restoration and resilience of wild salmon. In 2019, the BC government asked Pacific Salmon Foundation to bring awareness to the iconic species of salmon that we have here by hosting the first Wild Salmon Day. And since then, the Yukon and several municipalities have joined us, including the District of Squamish last year. Thank you. We could point it right at my shirt as well. Good branding opportunity. Okay, so by proclaiming June 1st Wild Salmon Day in Squamish, so you're joining the province of British Columbia along with dozens of other BC municipalities from Prince George to Nanaimo to Victoria in recognizing the significant cultural, economic, and environmental place that Pacific salmon have in our communities. But we're also pleased to announce that because of the great support from municipalities like Squamish over the past few years, that this year Wild Salmon Day is being recognized as an international day of recognition. So after some conversations with Atlantic-based organizations, the Atlantic Salmon Trust in the UK and the Atlantic Salmon Federation in Eastern Canada, they've joined forces with the Pacific Salmon Foundation and the First Nations Fisheries Council of BC to build international momentum for wild salmon recovery. So we've launched a new website, which is wildsalmonday.com, and organizations from both Pacific and Atlantic coasts and around the world are coming together to celebrate wild salmon. So this upwelling of support really helpful to us at the Pacific Salmon Foundation, because salmon need us now more than ever. Although I know in my community of Port Moody and even in Squamish, we've seen decent returns in the past year at some species of salmon. In BC, they are 70% of salmon are still in decline. So we know that our broad community of people working on behalf of salmon, that Wild Salmon Day is a day to recognize the work that's being done to try to bring salmon back and to think about how we can come together to help. This includes streamkeepers and environmental organizations in Squamish. So over the past 20 plus years, PSF has granted almost $500,000 to community groups in the District of Squamish. So that's including groups like Squamish Streamkeepers, Squamish River Watershed Society for Stewardship, and Squamish River, Watershed Society for stewardship and community planning activities. And then we've also provided grants for yellowfish signage around the community and to school groups that are doing salmon program for habitat assessment of the Alaho River Chinook, as well as numerous habitat restoration projects on the Squamish River, Squamish Estuary, Squamish Spit, and just to name a few. So on behalf of Salmon, we're lucky enough to speak for Salmon at the Pacific Salmon Foundations. We're grateful for everyone working on these issues locally. And this evening, we want to encourage Mayor and Council to continue to be a part of this tremendous community effort by declaring June 1st Wild Salmon Day. So that's why I'm here this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Council, do you have any questions for our visitor, or we have a request before us if we're there? Go ahead, Councillor Stoner.
Thank you, through the chair. I'm just curious if you know if there's anything specifically planned in Squamish around June 1st or that week, or?
Yeah, through the chair, through the mayor. On June 1st, I'm not sure. A lot of the activities are taking place online as a recognition this year, although we are encouraging people to raise a flag symbolically this year and in real next year. We do have an event planned on June 5th, so shortly after. It's actually an event that we've put together with Pacific Salmon Foundation and Nature Trust, because we're doing more and more work in the area. And it's actually a fundraising event at House Sound Brewery, on the evening of June 5th. So we're hoping to see a lot of stream keepers and other people out that evening to celebrate and help support salmon work.
Thank you. Any other? Go ahead, Councillor Pettingill.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. It sounds like there has been and continues to be good momentum on this. Just sort of curious, and maybe it's too big a question for tonight, but we've seen under the threat of tariffs, a lot of things that I think we've been making good progress on, we seem to be backsliding on a bit. Are you seeing that in the sort of wild salmon space as well, or are we still okay there?
So through the chair, I don't know if I can speak to the broader issue of challenges with tariffs and things, but just I guess anecdotally, we have heard from some of our partners in the US that they're having some challenges with funding because some of the changes that have taken place in the US around government funding. And so I think that's actually opened up a lot more conversations on how we can work together, transboundary and across border. We're not sure about the economic issue with salmon yet. I do know that there are treaty discussions that are ongoing that happen every 5 and 10 years that are kind of up for discussion over the next year. So we expect that piece might become an issue.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, or we do have a proclamation request? Councillor Stoner moves and Councillor Anderson seconds. Would you speak to it?
Yeah, just briefly. Thanks so much for being here in person today, and appreciate that there isn't anything actually happening in town on June 1st, but looking forward to finding out more about the June 5th event and what online events are happening on June 1st around Wild Salmon Day. It's really exciting to hear the international momentum. We definitely have our challenges with our Pacific salmon stocks, but the Atlantic salmon stocks, unfortunately, are much more challenged than our Pacific salmon stocks even. So getting that international momentum around salmon conservation more broadly, I think is really, really exciting to see. Thanks for all the work that Pacific Salmon Foundation does, and happy to support the proclamation here this evening, and a great lead into World Oceans Day the following week, June 8th. Yeah.
Thank you. Next, I've got Councillor Anderson, then French.
I came across a newspaper clipping from 1889, and I'll read out a couple of sentences. It says here, the salmon run in the lower Mamquam River, a tributary of the Squamish, is one of the sights of the West, capital W West. Many parties are traveling up Howe Sound to see the spectacle. Where they were going was around our Squamish Adventure Center and the Carson Place Slough in that area, where we don't have salmon spawning highlight of the West today. It's a restoration project that needs a systemic approach and partnerships. And the Pacific Salmon Foundation is a specialist in both, with a lot of experience in the Squamish Valley, as Ms. Green has mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor French.
Thanks, Mayor Herford. I wholeheartedly support the motion and the initiative, and wanted to share that a couple of days ago, I went with former Mayor Patricia Heintzman, who's very involved with the Watershed Society, and visited culvert number 2 along our Spit Road. It has just been replaced. It used to be metal culvert, which had deteriorated over time and has been replaced by large concrete bunkers. Right now, there are cofferdams on either side of this replacement for culvert 2. And the next couple of days, those cofferdams will be removed and the water will flow there again. Perfect timing for June 1st as, yeah. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you for that. Any other comments? Happy to support this this resolution or this proclamation request. I think I really appreciate all the work in community and more broadly around the importance of our wild salmon. And I really appreciate your at the start of your presentation speaking about the importance of this to the Squamish Nation, which we've heard, which we also hear from the nation broadly and nation members individually. So thank you for keeping that at the forefront of this as well. So happy to support. I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so our next item is unscheduled public attendance. So if anyone wishes to address council on a matter that is urgent, this would be their opportunity to step forward. Not seeing any, we'll move on. We're on to the we have no public hearings. We're on to the consent agenda. Is there anyone like to pull anything from the consent agenda or move the consent agenda? Councillor Stoner moves, Councillor Hamilton seconds. All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. Next, we're on to District of Squamish zoning bylaw number 2200/2011 amendment bylaw. This is for 38702 and 38710 and 38716 Britannia Avenue. And we'll get staff set up and we'll get underway.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Philip Gibbons, planner with Community Development. And as the Mayor mentioned, be presenting a rezoning proposal for 3 lots on Britannia Avenue. And this is Council's first time seeing this proposal. And as this is a under provincial legislation, this residential project is prohibited from holding a public hearing. Okay. The site context. So the subject site here consists of 3 parcels on Britannia Avenue, and the combined area of 2,307 square meters. And each of these lots is currently developed with a single unit dwelling. And to the south, as you can see, is a residential townhouse development, and to the north is a duplex, and across Britannia Avenue is a single unit dwellings, and the Discovery Trail runs an ecological area to the east. Applicable district land use regulations are outlined on the slide, along with a map showing the zoning in the area. So the official community plan land use designation is residential neighborhood, and it's currently zoned R4, residential 4. And site falls within development permit areas 1, 2, 3, and 11. 1 is for environmental protection, 2 is for flood hazard, and 3 regulates the form and character, and 11 is for wildfire protection. This is also within a flood hazard area. And the proposal here is to rezone the 3 subject properties from the R4 zone to a new comprehensive development 115 zone to facilitate the development of 18 3-bedroom townhouses. So it'll be a 6-plex on each lot. And these townhouses are to be 3 stories in height and include car parking at grade. So each townhouse will have 3 bedrooms, 2 parking spaces, a balcony, and a private outdoor amenity area. And the applicant is also committed to a no gas cabinet being registered on title. For the parking, the development has a requirement of 41 spaces. That is 36 for the townhouse use and 5 visitor parking spaces. This application is proposing to provide the 36 spaces for the townhouses and no visitor parking. And staff are supportive this proposed parking reduction due to the site's proximity to downtown transit, bikeability, walkability, and proximity to other amenities such as schools. And this is consistent with district policy in the Climate Action Plan and Transportation Master Plan. The development will also include 42 bicycle parking spaces, and this includes 2 for each townhouse and 6 visitor spaces, meeting the bylaw requirements. For comparison to the existing R4 zone, so the proposed zone includes 6 stratified units per lot. This is instead of the 4 stratified and 1 accessory currently permitted in the R4 zone. There are 2 parking spaces per dwelling unit. The R4 one only requires 1 per unit. And then there's proposed changes to the setback requirements. The front setback reduced from 7.6 to 2.13 meters, rear setback from 3 meters to 1.22, and the interior side setback, that is to the north, will be increased from 1.2 to 3.2 meters, and to the south with the laneway from 4.6 to 1.98 meters. And moving on, the community amenity contribution. So for this proposal, a riparian park, as shown on the screen. This will include a trail connection between the adjacent laneway and the Discovery Trail, and extended frontage, curb, gutter, sidewalk, boulevard, and utility relocations to tie the existing laneway to the frontage to the south, and some minor intersection improvements for safety. So the riparian park to the rear of the site is currently a dense thicket of invasive plant species. These will be removed and revegetated with native species. This will enhance the biological function of this area. It will also include a park bench and sign detailing the heritage of the existing house and Denville. And it's understood that 38702 Britannia may have been the first house in the area. This slide shows a comparison of the CAC policy, which shows the proposed in-kind amenities to be of roughly similar value to the CAC policy cash in lieu amount. The project aligns with OCP policy and the land use designation. It provides infill of underutilized land with compact high density, increases diversity of housing forms in Denville. It also advances 2 strategic plan objectives, increasing diversity of housing forms and creating new trails and park space. For engagement, an information sign was placed on site. The application was posted on the development review webpage. District received 2 requests for public information meeting. This does not meet the threshold to require a meeting, and no comments were received from the public to date. And a notice of bylaw readings was mailed out to nearby residents and also placed in the chief newspaper. The next steps, there's no Ministry of Transportation approval required for this rezoning, and no, as I mentioned previously, a public hearing is prohibited. If given 3 readings, staff will work with the applicant to satisfy the conditions of adoption and schedule the bylaw for adoption once complete. And if adopted, other permits, including development permit, servicing agreement, and building permit would still be required. And finally, recommended that amendment bylaw number 3102 be given first, second, and third reading. And prior to adoption of the bylaw, a land development agreement be executed, including the following commitments to a riparian park and associated restoration work, extended frontage to connect the laneway intersection with existing curb, sidewalk, and intersection upgrades, and a gravel path connecting the laneway to the Discovery Trail, and an informative heritage sign. Thank you.
Okay, council, questions? Councillor Anderson, is it?
Thank you, Mayor Herford. Just a minor point. I wondered whether we've just recently done some downtown streetscape standards, and of course we might draw on those for other neighborhoods. My question is regarding the heritage sign. When we have when a developer offers to put up a sign, sometimes they don't last very long and they kind of look shabby, or it's due to materials used, and of course they're advancing all the time. But is there consultation between our team and the developer as to the materials used and the standards that are executed in such a sign? We would want it to last, a dozen years or more, metal printing, that sort of thing. Do we have standards to consult, or do we work with the developer on that type of thing?
Thank you for that question through the mayor. This is something that we would work with the developer with in consultation with our communication department, our public works department, and the developer to come up with the best solution for the signage.
Thank you.
Councillor French?
Thanks, Mayor Herford. The report to council didn't include a landscape plan, and the architectural drawings, I sort of felt like didn't have a ton of information, like the amount that I'm kind of used to. And there's no shade impact information. So I was a little bit surprised by what I felt was a bit of a lack of information for this project. Is that by design? Could you just fill us in a bit on that?
Through the mayor, staff guide the applicant on what level of information they would like to see based on sort of the scale of the project and impacts that we see relevant. In this case, there's no height increase proposed from the existing zoning, and also there's an increased setback to the north where you would typically see shadow impacts. So staff felt it wasn't necessary to provide a shadow study in this instance. For this scale project, we don't typically require rezoning a landscape plan necessarily. That would be reviewed at development permit stage. Sometimes applicants submit landscape plans anyway, and then they would be included in the package.
Okay, and there's no mention of on-street parking in the report to council. And the drawings don't seem to indicate any formal on-street parking infrastructure. So I'm wondering, will there be any marked or formal on-street parking spots created along Britannia Avenue with this development?
Through the mayor, I don't have specific information on what the parking situation would be. The guidance that I received from engineering didn't provide that information, whether that would be facilitated in that frontage. I imagine it would be if it can be accommodated.
Okay, and based on what I see in the drawings, it looks like with about 2 meters of depth, there's enough space in front of all of the garage doors to park an average sized vehicle outside of the garage and have that vehicle be completely off the travel portion of either the on-site road or the laneway. So this might suggest to me that in actual fact, each unit could have 3 spaces. And so I'm just wondering, do I have all those dimensions correct? And is it possible to park a vehicle of average size outside of the garage?
Through the chair, I mean, that may be possible. We wouldn't designate that as a parking space. It wouldn't meet the requirements. But we know anecdotally that people do that.
Can I get one more follow-up on the parking?
Yeah, go ahead.
So the garage floors are measured at 2.74 meters. That has me wondering though about the actual height of the garage doors. Will they be tall enough to park your F-150s, your Ram 1500 Tundras?
The zoning bylaw specifies a minimum height of 2.2 meters. And then I believe in this instance, this development is proposing 2.4 meters, which would be plenty of clearance for a larger vehicle.
Great. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Stoner.
Thank you, through the chair. In the staff report, it begins with the percentage of housing needs being fulfilled by the rezoning applications, which is a new approach from staff. But I'm a little bit confused on the calculations presented for this project. 18 units of 685 says in the report that that's providing 0.4% of the housing need. Can you just clarify how we're calculating those percentages?
Through the mayor, calculate that based on the uplift the zoning provided. So it was 3 additional units instead of 18 for the entire project.
Okay, because you could technically build 5 units potentially on the R4 zoning. Got it. Okay, thank you for clarifying that. And then I was curious whether these would be 3 separate stratas, or is it intended to be 1 strata? The staff report's quite clear that they're not trying to pursue lot consolidation. And so I'm just curious if there's any pros or cons for the community if lot consolidation isn't pursued. Like, does it change requirements from the subdivision control bylaw, or is it just as is?
Through the mayor, by not consolidating the lots, it allows for a staging of the project. So that's obviously a benefit. There's no specific disbenefit to the community in not having them consolidated. You would still end up with the same project, which has to meet the same requirements.
Okay, Council, any other questions? We do have a recommendation before us. Are you going to move? And your Councillor Stoner seconding. Thank you. The staff recommendation. Yep. Go ahead. Can you speak to it?
Yeah, thanks very much. Happy to move the staff recommendation on this project. It clearly, in my mind, hits a lot of the markers that we're looking for. It is as far as our zoning is concerned, it's actually a gentle density increase compared to our existing zoning. And it comes with it some amenity contributions that I think the neighborhood will be well served by. So yeah, with that, I will gladly support this recommendation. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Stoner.
Yeah, also happy to support the recommendation or the motion that's on the floor. As Councillor Hamilton mentioned, I think that this is a great example of gentle density in a very walkable, very accessible neighborhood. And the plan for restoration of the park in behind, I think, is a really unique on-site amenity that the community the immediate neighborhood and the community will really benefit from. The amount of invasive species that are back there with some of our nonprofit organizations who have tried to tackle it for a few years in a row now with limited success. I think hats off to the developer who's going to try and do that in a more successful way. But that'll be really, really positive for that riparian area in behind this development. Yeah, I think it's a really interesting proposal and happy to support as presented.
Thank you, Councillor French.
I too support the motion that we have in front of us, the 3 ratings for this project. For many reasons, close to transit service, as we've heard, and the fact that it's in between a co-living house on one side and a long existing townhouse development on the other side. It fits well in that space at the edge of this neighborhood. And as well, the proposal bringing us some solutions for invasive species that are always problematic, and also delivering some important culture and heritage elements that I think will be a nice bonus, not just for this neighborhood, but for the entire community.
Thank you. Other comments? Oh, Councillor Pettingill, sorry.
Yeah, thanks. I'm struggling with this one, and maybe a recurring theme for me tonight. Really like the project. I think it fits well with the neighborhood. I really appreciate the CAC and the invasive species management plans. The challenge for me is the exposure to the pipeline and not understanding what that risk is. You know, again, looking at other jurisdictions, it is something, from what I understand, to at least have some concerns or questions about. I hope we can deal with that soon, maybe through budget. Some of the avenues I'd hope to grapple with this have not come to fruition, and so I recognize I need to figure out a different approach. But I just find myself challenged to sleep at night without understanding that risk better, which I understand could be significant. And I would like to have that understanding before approving more density along this route, which is really frustrating because, as I say, I think everything else, this is a really appropriate development. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional comments? Councillor Greenlaw?
Yeah, I also find it hard when Councillor Pettingill points out the proximity of pipelines. But I'm going to speak in support of the motion. I think this development will be a net benefit to the community, and I appreciate the approach that they have for the CACs in Parkland, which is to basically remove a bunch of invasive species and try to bring in native plants again and create a more natural parkland for people to enjoy. I also like that it's gentle densification in the community, and it's by a smaller developer who is very conscientious of sustainable development and also design and family living. So yeah, but I would also like to echo Councillor Pettingill's concerns about proximity to pipeline and the lack of information around the risk. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Anderson.
I won't repeat the comments of my colleagues with whom I agree on the density, other matters. I'd just like to point out that the word on the street that I understand is that the people are very happy with the engagement undertaken within the neighborhood on the part of the developer. And I'm aware that the developer has gone to extra lengths to not only consult with staff and negotiate with staff regarding the amenity contributions, but has reached out to other community organizations and members of the community regarding that package that we have before us. And well done. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm speaking in support of the motion. I think this is an example of what just going one step further than our existing zoning we can realize as a community. So that is, of course, the additional housing, which we know we need, but also reclaiming this laneway for the community, I think, is actually quite exciting in the way that it'll connect through to the corridor trail in behind, and as well as the work in that area around the invasive species. And I think it will be a nice area to have some gathering space there as well. So I'm quite excited to see this project advance, and happy to support. With that, I'll call the question. All in favor? And opposed? Councillor Pettingill opposes. Motion carries. Thank you so much. So next on the agenda will be District of Squamish zoning bylaw number 2200-2011 amendment bylaw. This will be for 1032 Finch Drive, and is bylaw number 3153-2025.
Thank you, Mayor Herford. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Brian Daly, planner with Community Development. I'm here tonight to present a rezoning application at 1032 Finch Drive for consideration of first 3 readings. Subject property is 8,440 square meters and located at 1032 Finch Drive. The property is currently developed with a single unit dwelling. Property is subject to the Loggers East Neighborhood Plan with the rural low-density multifamily land use designation. The property is currently zoned Rural Residential 1 and is subject to Development Permit Area 1 for protection of the environment, Form of Character Development Permit Area 3 Universal Guidelines, and Development Permit Area 11 Protection from Wildfire Hazard. It is also in a flood hazard area. This application proposes to rezone the property from RL1 to CD 119 to facilitate the development of 40 three-bedroom townhomes. The following table outlines the proposed zoning metrics. The proposed parking meets the requirements of the zoning bylaw. 2 spaces per dwelling unit are provided, 1 inside of a garage and 1 surface parking stall. The applicants have committed to a 2.25 meter tall garage door height, which is tall enough to accommodate a full-size pickup truck, and also providing electric vehicle charging infrastructure in each garage. The zoning bylaw only requires that an energized outlet be provided in the townhome units. The applicants are committing to providing the full electric charging infrastructure. Visitor parking meets the requirements of the zoning bylaw and is provided adjacent to the community parklet in the center of the development. Maximum permitted height is 14.4 meters. However, this will only be applicable to buildings 4 and 5 in the center of the development, away from the property lines adjacent to existing single-unit dwellings. The applicants have agreed to a maximum building height of 11.5 meters or 3 stories for buildings 1 to 3 and building 6, which are set back 4.57 meters from adjacent properties. This commitment will be secured in the land development agreement, and this element of the design was intended to address concerns from the neighbors regarding shading. The original application included 4-story townhomes across the entire site. The proposal includes 40 townhomes with a maximum total gross floor area of 6,131 square meters for all of the units. Each townhouse will have 3 bedrooms and range in size from 1,500 square feet to 1,600 square feet. The project is taking advantage of density bonus options outlined in the rural low-density multifamily land use designation. The proponent has provided an environmental report to assess the net developable area of the site and identify the riparian setbacks on the property. Of the overall 0.8 hectares, once the riparian setbacks are removed, the net developable area is 0.780 hectares, which is important for the density calculation. So the applicants are proposing to the following commitments to secure the density bonus provisions in the Loggers East Neighborhood Plan. The first is the public open space density bonus. The applicants are proposing a strata-owned community parklet with a children's play area, covered structure, and trail. The area is approximately 2,500 square meters in size, which meets the 30% requirement, and will have a statutory right-of-way for public access over the area. This allows for a 15% density bonus or an additional 5.25 units. For the rental housing density bonus, the applicant is proposing to donate 5% of the project's gross floor area to the Squamish Community Housing Society. This will result in 306 square meters in at least 2 units that will be donated to the Housing Society. This allows for a 20% density bonus, which works out to 7 additional units. And finally, the energy efficiency density bonus. The applicant is committing to enter into a no gas covenant to provide electric vehicle charging infrastructure in each garage and to maximize the use of wood-based building materials for the project, which allows for a 10% density bonus or an additional 3.5 units. So once you add all of these units together, you get a 50.75 units per hectare, and then you multiply that by the net developable area of 0.780 hectares, which comes to an allowable density of 40 units, which the applicants are proposing. This application triggers the community amenity contribution policy. The applicant has proposed the following offer, which meets the policy for a townhouse rezoning that proposes 30 dwelling units or more. In addition to the CAC contributions noted on the previous slide, the applicant is proposing the following additional amenities: the reduced building height for buildings along the property lines, and a commitment to provide a 2.25 meter tall garage door height to ensure that the garage door is tall enough to accommodate full-size pickup trucks. So the following items noted on this slide will be secured in the land development agreement, including the CAC contributions and the timing of their delivery, the donation of the floor area to the Housing Society, the commitment to provide a public access right-of-way over the Strata Park trail area, the garage door height commitment, the commitment related to the lower building heights for the buildings along the shared property lines, the commitment to a no gas covenant, and the commitment to provide electric vehicle charging and maximize the wood-based building materials in the project, as well as a riparian protection covenant over the environmentally sensitive areas on the site. To inform the community per policy, the project was posted to the district's development showcase and a development sign was posted at the site. More than 10 requests for a public information meeting were received. However, they were not all received prior to the deadline to trigger the public information meeting, which was September 2nd, 2024. Requests and comments received were attached to the staff report. Notifications have been sent in accordance with the Local Government Act prior to consideration of first reading. As this is a residential rezoning, no public hearing is permitted. So a number of the comments that were received from the public had shared concerns about shading and the proposed building height. This led to staff working with the applicants to address relevant comments, which did result in a lower building height for the townhomes closest to the shared property lines. So staff are recommending first 3 readings for bylaw 3153/2025. And prior to adoption, a land development agreement be executed to secure the commitments noted on this slide. That concludes my presentation. I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you. Council, questions? Councillor Storr.
Thank you, through the chair. Appreciate the additional detail on trying to calculate the density bonus. I'm still a little bit confused by the 20% density bonus for rental when the proposal is simply meeting our CAC policy. So we're giving them a 20% density bonus for meeting our CAC policy. Is that correct?
Through the mayor, the rental density bonus speaks to if a portion is rental housing. There's no specific detail on that. So staff have been working with the applicant on this proposal, noting that this bonus floor area, a portion of it is going to the housing society. So staff are trying to be flexible in noting that this is going to help deliver this product to the housing society and result in more units. So staff thought this was a reasonable offer to obtain this density bonus, given that there's no specific target in that policy.
But as a development over 30 townhomes, they're required to donate that as per our CAC policy, are they not?
That is correct. And I think I'll let my director take this.
Thank you. Through the mayor, the CAC policy is not a requirement. It's still voluntary. So those are targets, and sometimes some applications are able to meet them, not every one of them. When we worked on the Loggers East neighborhood plan, we specifically didn't put any policy around that and maintained flexibility, essentially. So you can meet the CAC policy and also qualify for the density bonus from the intention of the plan perspective.
All right. And then can staff clarify why they see this proposal as increasing the diversity of housing forms and types when it's simply delivering 40 near identical 3-bedroom townhouses? There's no variability in what's actually being provided.
Through the mayor, this neighborhood is currently the majority of it is developed with single unit dwellings. So there's a lack of townhomes in this neighborhood. Further, not the most recent interim housing needs report, but the previous one that was prepared in 2023 noted that 43% of the homes required by 2031 needed to be 3 bedrooms. So there is a need for this form of housing being 3 bedrooms or more. So staff thought it was appropriate that, or it is identifying a need that was identified in the housing needs report, and presently there's not this, this form of housing is not provided in this neighborhood.
I appreciate that the current form of housing is predominantly single family. However, the vast majority of rezonings we've seen come forward through the Loggers Lane, with the exception of one, which I think has some apartments, have been 3-bedroom townhouses. And where we've pushed developers to include some 2-bedroom townhouses, we've seen them do so. But what is the risk of receiving a whole bunch of applications that are just 3-bedroom townhouses with no variability in them?
Through the mayor, I'm not sure there is a risk in that. given that it's been identified in the housing needs report that this is a form that we need more of. And I will note that adding more, or, adding specific requirements to a variety of bedroom types into this type of development does make it more challenging for the developers to ultimately construct and deliver these. I will note that I did work on the 2 files that had requirements for 2 bedrooms, and neither of them have come to fruition at this time. So I think staff are trying to be flexible with developers to allow them to come with proposals that they think are economically viable. And staff haven't pushed back given that it's an identified need for a type of housing.
Okay, thanks for that clarification. And then lastly, just clarifying on the public information meeting, you mentioned in your presentation that the deadline was September 2nd, but in your response in the staff report, it says September 9th was the deadline for public information requests, in which case I read that there was at least 10 that had been submitted by September 9th. So I'm just curious why we wouldn't have requested the developer to do a public information meeting given the level of interest from the community. And we know that there aren't really any other avenues for community to engage on these files given that we can't hold a public hearing.
Through the mayor, I will note that 2 of those requests were from the same person. So it actually still didn't meet the threshold by September 9th. I recognize that there was some desire for community engagement on this. However, the majority of the comments were all related to the height. So staff did attempt to work with the developer to try and resolve those comments, and staff was following the policy as it has been drafted. Not sure if you or Jonas would like to add anything to that.
Councillor Pettingill?
Stratton units will be transferred to them.
Through the mayor, the ownership will be transferred to the Housing Society.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, Councillor Hamilton.
Yeah, thanks very much. Thank you for the clarity on the transfer of the units to the Housing Society. It's really good. I'm often unclear as to exactly what's happening. It's really good to have that clarity here. My question is on the density bonus regarding the energy savings. First of all, the staff report showed the number of units that are bonused for each subcategory. I find that very helpful, very useful. It's something I did on the side when I was reading the staff report. It was really great to see it in the presentation. If you could make a habit of including those, that'd be great. Anyways, on to my actual question. What is the difference between a full EV charging infrastructure and a level 2 energized plug, which is BC building code?
Through the mayor, almost exactly how you articulated it. An actual charger would be a charger that you can plug in and charge a vehicle. A plug would just be a plug that you would have to go out and buy the charging thing, plug that into, and then plug that into your car. So you would be able to just drive into this garage and charge your car because everything would be there.
Okay, so that has a value of approximately $1,000. That's how much mine would have cost if it didn't come with my car. No gas covenant is pretty much standard part of our rezoning now. And a promise to use wood where possible seems sort of like business as usual for townhouse developments. So how do we measure? So right now it seems to me like they really aren't doing a lot for the extra 3.5 units in terms of energy efficiency. Can you tell me, how do we decide how does staff decide whether somebody's gone far enough to achieve this 10% density bonus?
Through the mayor, there's a specific section in the Loggers East neighborhood plan that outlines those commitments that you have to do 3 of to get that density bonus. And those are all outlined in that section. So they are checking the boxes per the policy.
Okay, thanks. I think, so I'm reading that. That's on page 39 of the Loggers East plan, which was written in 2020. So yeah. Okay. It seems to me like this might need to be updated in light of more recent changes in building code and energy efficiency requirements. This seems to be the Loggers East neighborhood plan seems to now, that upper threshold now seems to be in line with much more standard building code policies, but that's not a
Mr.
question.
Valencius?
Thank you. I would just like to respond to that. It is true that the standards have risen, but the development costs have risen significantly as well. So it's sort of a fine balance right now is trying to, provide some flexibility, which the plan does allow for in this time. And then in the future, when the economics change for development, I think we could look at, okay, what else could we include in the plan? It's just that right now, from a feasibility perspective, we are quite worried about developments overcommitting. And then when it comes to development stage, not being able to follow through. And we see that happening quite a bit right now.
Councillor Stoner on this point?
Yeah, on this point, and I don't disagree. I understand that we're working in the market economics that we are today, but there's also, as I understand it, in this rezoning, no guarantee that they're actually going to build this building within the next year or two. Am I correct about that? And if so, is there a way that we can then put in their rezoning approval that this goes back, like a reverter clause? Like if we're going in here to say that, okay, in these times, this is what makes sense. But if they choose to hold on to it for 5 years, when market conditions are better, and then they're still held to this lower standard, that seems unfair to our community. And so what are our options to hold them accountable, either to deliver in the timeline that we need it or to revert back to appropriate standards at the time of development?
Maybe I'll start and then I'll pass it to Jonas to add to it. Staff have been in discussions with our legal counsel with respect to land development agreements and adding kind of expiry clause language. So that's something that could be explored or, it could be drafted as part of this land development agreement. That obviously we've just kind of negotiated what would be provided. The land development agreement has yet to be finalized or drafted at this point. So I'll just leave it with that and see if Jonas has anything to add.
Okay, thank you. Councillor French?
Thanks, Mayor Herford. I pored over all the maps and couldn't see a mail kiosk. Just want to make sure that these folks are going to get their mail.
Through the mayor, yes, they will. It will likely be at the front of the development, though that might have been an item that was missed, given that they're still at the rezoning stage at this point.
Thank you. Other questions? We've got a recommendation before us, if that's where everyone is. Thank you. Councillor French moves the staff recommendation. I'll second that. Would you like to speak to it?
Yes, thanks, Mayor Herford. This development, I think, is consistent with what we've seen before in this neighborhood. We certainly need this form of housing. And this is a little bit out there, but I'm impressed that the architectural drawings included snow dump areas. We don't usually see that. And we do occasionally get snow in Squamish. So good on these folks for having a snow dump.
Other comments? Councillor Pettingill?
Yeah, a few things. One, unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to support this. I think, obviously, if the concern about understanding the pipeline risk was an issue in the last rezoning, it definitely is on this one, which is basically right on the pipeline. And so, again, that's to be, hopefully we'll find a way through that sooner rather than later. But I just want to, just reflecting on the discussion, trying to wrap my head around, our push for higher garage heights to support large vehicles, while at the same time we're having discussions about reducing parking requirements and vehicle dependence. We've got our mode shift. And so, we may, I think, to my mind, may need to rethink that ask in general. But the developers offered what this council has been asking for here, so it shouldn't be an issue with this one. Just thinking back to the tree canopy discussion we had earlier today, and I understand that was focused on downtown, but I think the principles apply, and especially when we're looking at densification. And I understand we don't generally look at in a rezoning where trees go and all that sort of thing, but I am sort of reflecting on that, wanting to understand that the sorts of densities we're approving, that sort of coverage and that amount of green space is possible. And I don't know quite how to wrap my head around that without sort of getting into DP stuff at rezoning, but I'll just throw that out as a comment. The other piece, recalling back that at the time we approved the Loggers East plan, I was quite proud of it. I think we feel like we all were, in terms of being forward thinking and pushing, action on climate. And so it's kind of cool to be here just a couple years later and thinking, oh, it's not very much, so it's maybe something to kind of be proud of in this. And maybe it is time to sort of more globally update some of those standards, but just interesting listening to this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments? Councillor Hamilton?
Yeah, I'm going to be speaking in support of this rezoning. I do have reservations for the lengths to which they went to achieve particularly the 10% energy bonusing increase. But I see the point that our standards were set. And while we may have been proud when we set the standards, the BC Energy Step Code and the Zero Carbon Step Code and the BC Building Code regarding electric vehicles have all basically caught up to that. So us improving our policies and standards is not this developer's fault or challenge. So I won't hold it against them. I do think the building form is reasonable and appropriate for what this neighborhood will become. And I appreciate the 2 units that will be going to the Squamish Housing Society. I think that's an important mechanism to support the Squamish Housing Society and deliver more affordable housing within our community. So, thanks very much.
Thank you. Other comments? Councillor Stoner?
I'd like to propose an amendment. And I'm just trying to think of the best way to do that, given that this has been moved at third reading or to third reading. So I'll look to staff if this is not feasible, but can we add something to the requirements in the list of land development agreement items at this point?
You're thinking this reverter discussion, trying to capture that?
I think we have done this in the past with bigger developments, and we've heard council comments, and we can take that away and come back unless council wants to give very specific direction. Then council can add it to the motion. I think our preference would be to talk to developers, see their development plans to make sure that the timeline we put into the land development agreement lines up with feasibility.
So, and to do that, then that would be ideally less than the 3 readings that we're considering. That's more of a statement than a. Otherwise, we've given the 3 readings with it in there. So, Councillor Stoner, do you?
I will propose an amendment that we add additional clause J to the land development agreement, which would have to be agreed to prior to adoption. That would be a sunset clause on the land development agreement that is no longer than 3 years. And I'll speak to it if it's seconded.
Councillor Pettingill?
A clarifying question to staff, if I may.
You can try it.
So I was under the impression, because of previous discussions, that we were, as general practice, doing this on all LDAs. Somehow I had that in my mind. I'm looking from people's expressions that may not be the case, but
I think, yeah. Councilor Starr, do you want to make that comment?
I believe we've only done it on one as directed by council, and that was on Tantalus Road.
I think you might, through the mayor, that may be correct. We'd have to go back and check. It's certainly something that we are considering for larger developments, not smaller developments. And 3 years is a really tight timeline for turning this around.
Councilor Hamilton, seconds, go ahead.
Thank you. Speaking to my amendment, I appreciate that it is a short timeline and turnaround. The reason why I'm doing it for that timeline is because it falls in line with our agreements around the CMHC Housing Accelerator Fund, which are the commitments under which we have said that we would review our policies and the standards with which we're holding developments accountable in order to get housing built. And with that, I'm willing to perhaps consider some of the, I won't say that they're lower standards, but to me, this doesn't really hit the mark as presented, but I think I'm willing to entertain that if it means that they can actually get shovels in the ground and deliver on a 40 units of housing that we know that our community needs, not in 5 years' time, but in 2 years' time. So if the developer is able to do that, then great. And otherwise, they can come back with something different. Thanks.
Thank you. Comments on the amendment? Councilor Pettingill?
I mean, I said I wasn't supporting because of the risk thing, but I do wonder if the general interest is to generally see this move forward, if it's better to give it 2 readings, make an amendment to give it 2 readings, and there's a chance for a bit of back and forth before deciding on a 3rd reading. Because if we, put in an unattainable thing, then for 3rd reading, then it just kills it if it's unattainable, as opposed to providing an opportunity for some back and forth. And
yeah, thank you. And then there's the and to that point, I'm really torn on this one. I understand what we're trying, what the mover's trying to accomplish here, and I see the logic there. I'm concerned about if we take the delay that we just heard from Councillor Pettingill, which is sort of would give us more room to have the discussion and then give it third reading. So make it a condition of 3rd reading. Is that discussion happening? That's also a delay, which we're trying to do this the motivation is to ensure that projects happen, and delay is one of the pieces that causes, that prevents projects from happening. So I'm really torn on this piece, but given that those are the 2 options, I'd rather advance. I think I'll support the amendment, as I'd rather advance the process rather than to delay for additional reading. Councillor Hamilton, seconded. Any other comments on the amendment? Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Anderson.
I have noticed during recent months that the concept of sunset clauses is an active discussion within the local housing development community, not only among large projects, but even small and medium-sized folks as well. I would be concerned about what the implications may be for the investment climate for delivering on housing here. So I won't be supporting this amendment. I'm happy to pursue discussions in future around what we're trying to achieve here, but I don't think at this time I'm prepared to support the concept of sunset clauses.
Thank you. Any other comments? Seeing none, I'll call the question on the amendment. All in favor and opposed? Councillor French and Anderson opposed. Amendment carries. Now we're back to the main motion as amended. Any further comments on that? Councillor Pettingill?
just one I wanted to, and maybe I should just be shutting up because I should have spoken on not being non-supporter for the risk piece, but I did, another piece I am sort of wrestling with in my mind, generally conceptually, is there is the need for 3-bedroom, but we have also heard, and I've heard at least from seniors and others looking to stay in the community, that are looking for smaller ground floor. And so I think that is something to consider, especially if we've had other developments for financial other reasons, maybe not move forward. If we're not getting some of those units that are appropriate for seniors and others that need ground floor, that may be a challenge.
Thank you. I'm speaking in favor of the motion. I think we've reflecting on the piece that has been challenging for some members of council here around the bonuses. Bonuses are ways that we incentivize things that we would like. And often we see development proposals come before us that ask us to vary things into vary targets that we set out, where this is people taking our invitation to walk into these commitments. I do think that overall, as the rest of the regulations have sort of caught up with the regulations around this particular sub-area plan, I think we might be well served to revisit those at some point in future. However, I think they've done a good job of meeting those targets, and I appreciate staff's rationale around how that's been decided. I also think that I was happy to see the plan feels like it addresses the very reasonable feedback from the neighbors. I thought that was great to see that evolution and setting back the taller buildings and not having and going shorter along the edges of the property. I thought that was really great to see, and I really appreciate the feedback from the community and seeing that responsiveness from the proponent to do what they could to positively impact those concerns. I also think that we have heard some challenges around this delivering this ground-oriented development. So I'm happy to see that they found a way here that they feel will work. I do think that as much as these are all rather large 3-bedroom units, there is an identified need for those. I think it's hard where not every development can be can tick all the boxes and can be everything. So we do need to keep an eye on this particular piece. And it might be a case of first past the post, and there might be a point where there's a lot of development there that is that 3-bedroom, and there might be opportunities for smaller units going forward. But we do have this need identified now, and so I'll be supporting for those reasons. The amendment does give me some pause, but if they're excited to move forward, then we've got a little extra fuel to do so with that amendment. So I'll be supporting. With that, I'll call the question on the motion as amended. All in favor? And opposed? Councillor Pettingill and Greenlaw opposed. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Council, we'll do this next item, then we'll take a break if everyone's okay with that. Yep. Okay. I will turn it over to staff to introduce themselves and the topics. This is the transportation bylaw updates.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. My name is Brian McMurtry, and I'm the Manager of Transportation, and joined by David Rolston, the Senior Manager of Infrastructure Planning and Acting Director of Engineering. And tonight, I'm going to provide a presentation on the Transportation Bylaw Updates agenda item. So a bit of background information. There's 3 ongoing projects that have led to the recommended bylaw updates included in the agenda package. The first project is the paid parking pilot project at Darrell Bay. Based off the direction received from Council at the March 11th committee meeting, staff are advancing the paid parking pilot project at the Darrell Bay location. The bylaw updates presented in the Council report, including updates to the traffic bylaw, municipal ticket information bylaw, fees and charges bylaw, and bylaw notice enforcement bylaw, were identified to support the pilot project. The next project that is leading to some recommended bylaw changes is the downtown speed limit reductions. And similarly, based off the direction from the December 10th Committee of the Whole meeting, staff are working towards implementing the speed limit reductions in the downtown and oceanfront areas. The BC Motor Vehicle Act allows municipalities to define speed limits on municipal streets through bylaws and signage. Staff have identified the updates to the traffic bylaw required to enforce speed limits that are reduced below the Motor Vehicle Act 50 km/h default. And the bylaw update includes both streets that are currently signed below that 50 km/h speed limit, as well as the planned streets as a part of the downtown and oceanfront areas where signage will be installed in the coming months. And then the final initiative that has led to sort of recommended bylaw changes is the district's EV chargers are getting ready to come online, and to support the new service, minor modifications to the fees and charges bylaw have been identified to ensure success of the program and ensure that the chargers are competitive with other options throughout the community. So first, I'll summarize the traffic bylaw changes. So the paid parking changes are to add a definition for a paid parking zone, and then to introduce new clauses describing how paid parking zones are established. The speed limit change project is like identified enabling modified speed limits from the Motor Vehicle Act defaults. And the bulk of the change is contained within Schedule E, which lists streets with modified speed limits, both existing and future areas once new signage is installed. And additionally, there's some minor housekeeping changes to remove references to a previously removed schedule that are going to be or are recommended to occur this time as well. The fees and charges bylaw, so the paid parking changes, we are establishing and communicating the recommended paid parking fees that have previously been discussed with council at the Darrell Bay pilot project, and recommending to introduce a new fee for a film permit where the film permit is applied at a paid parking lot, so to capture some of the lost paid parking revenue. So introducing a new fee to capture that. And then the minor amendment to the existing district operated EV charger fees is updating the level 2 charger fee from $2 per hour to $1.75 per hour. The bylaw notice enforcement bylaw update is identifying and enabling staff to authorize a third-party contractor through an agreement to enforce the traffic bylaw. So this is the bylaw that allows us to identify who is responsible for enforcing each of these different bylaws. And just to provide additional context, the plan is not to use a third party to enforce our bylaws for the paid parking pilot project, but this is providing opportunity if that direction changes in the future. And then the last bylaw that is recommended to be updated is the municipal ticket information bylaw, and that is to enable any authorized party to issue a bylaw infraction associated with paid parking additions in the traffic bylaw. So with that, the recommendations in the staff report are shown, which I will spare you from reading them out, and I'll move on to any questions.
Okay, who wants to get us going here? Councilor Pettingill.
Yeah, I've got a few. Is there not a way we can delegate setting fees for EV charging and paid parking? And it just seems in terms of things we've talked about, demand management or electricity prices and so on, it seems sort of overly burdensome to have to come to council for those sorts of fees. Is there a way to do that?
Through the mayor, so we actually looked into this and reached out to other municipalities to see what they're doing and review how their bylaws are currently setting fees. The best example that I was able to find is the city of North Vancouver has recently updated their fees and charges bylaw equivalent to allow a bit of a I guess, a threshold where a fee could be updated without requiring council approval for that bylaw. We felt that with this being a pilot project and then also the infancy of the EV charging network coming online, that those could be future changes that would be recommended at that time. But recognizing that these are new services and new initiatives for our community, we felt that we weren't quite ready to make that as the recommendation in the bylaw. And that still allows the authority to be in council's hands as changes are made in the future.
Okay, thank you for what it's worth in terms of these and the intent of like trying things out and see what happens. I'd be supportive of delegating these fees to staff decision, but move on to my next thing. I saw just in the, and I guess it wasn't the focus of here, but we did touch on the school speed zones, and I recall there's a restriction. We can't just say 24/7, 365, it's 30. But is there something more we could do to go beyond just school days? So it's like, it's a school, it's 7:30 a.m. to 7:30 p.m. all the time, or like how much are we restricted by the province there?
Through the mayor, I actually don't know the answer to that. Yeah, something that we can look into. The Motor Vehicle Act does define school zones as their own unique zone. And so as the staff report speaks to, we don't need to have a clause in our traffic bylaw to define them. But similar to how we're setting speed limits outside of school zones, or outside of school zones that are something away from the Motor Vehicle Act, you could use the same procedure to establish a speed limit within that school zone if that was of interest.
Yeah, just maybe not the focus of today, but knowing is it a school day or not, and therefore like there's kids around all the time if it's a school area. So, you know, maybe a 30 is a more appropriate, just general speed limit. I recall we had at a committee of the whole, I think, a discussion about Skyline. And my vague recollection was that we wanted Skyline to be down to 30. Did I misremember that, or because I saw it's kept at 40 in the bylaw?
Through the mayor, my recollection of that meeting was the question was whether or not it was staff's authority to create a speed limit unique from the Motor Vehicle Act on Skyline. And we communicated that it wasn't staff's authority to do that. So I don't believe there was a motion providing direction for staff to modify the speed limit to 30 kilometers an hour on Skyline.
Okay, I'll leave it to my colleagues maybe, but you know, I for me, a 30 makes sense there. The final thing, we did remove street permit application. And so I gather if you want to hold an event on the street, you know, there's a staff approval process. What is, do we have any sort of policy on what sort of makes it acceptable or not to close down the street to have an event? Is it like the certain number or who's having it, or what is the policy that sort of speaks to how we make that decision?
Through the mayor, that's not a question that I have the answer for tonight. So we can get back to you on that. And from coordinating the bylaw update with some other departments as well, my understanding of the change in Schedule D of removing that reference was it was a street permit or a schedule that was previously in this traffic bylaw that is no longer there. And so this was an error essentially that is being captured here. So I don't think this change itself has any change in how a street permit would be issued in the future.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? I had a question on the EV charging piece. I remember way back when this was set, there was questions around what it was going to cost to install them and operate them, and that thus when we were being asked to set this rate, I remember there not being a ton of answers there. I think we're further into this now. I get that this is reflecting sort of what the going rate is, so the market, but I'm still having a hard time connecting it back to what does that mean for what it costs to install and implement, or were those all grants? Like, are we by making this change, are we what does that mean in that context? Can you speak to when if not here, and I get that the market is what the market is, but when do we have that discussion, if not when we're discussing the rate here today? Sorry. Oh, there he is, Mr. Pickett.
Hi, thank you for the question. Ian Pickett's Manager of Sustainability and Climate Change.
Hold on, your audio is a bit funky. Just give us a second. We'll try to correct it
sorry.
here. You want to try again?
Sure. Is this better?
No, it's still pretty soft. Is you have a different microphone or headset plugged in or something?
Oh, that's odd. I'm so sorry. Is that any better?
There we are. We can hear you now. Go ahead.
Okay, I apologize for that. Good evening, everyone. Ian Pickett's Manager of Sustainability and Climate Change at the District of Squamish. In answer to your question, Mayor Herford, unfortunately, we still don't have much of any information. However, we are making this slight change in response to lessons from other nearby communities. So, for example, the resort municipality of Whistler started at $2 per hour and found that they were overcharging, so they weren't getting adequate usage, and they went down to $1 an hour, and they realized that they were not recovering their costs. So Whistler has landed at $1.75 an hour, and so we are learning from their example and putting our rate at the same, which sends a more consistent message. It is in line with them, and we believe this should be a good balance. Thank you.
So thank you for that. And a little bit earlier, I think it was Councillor Pettingill was asking about the flexibility to adjust the rate. This feels like a rate that doesn't move like hourly, like or gas stations do. But when would this be reviewed? Like, is this something that would be a standard part of the budget process to see how it's going, or where else? I just want to make sure that we're learning those lessons of trying, as we go here. Has there been thought to when the review would be for this? And I get that that's not included in the recommendation, but just.
Through the mayor, as Mr. McMurtry noted, that we will long-term look into having either like a sliding scale or the ability to change the prices subtly within staff authority. In the future, we looked into this and did not have the time to kind of enact that level. And as Mr. McMurtry said, because it's still one project still in pilot phase. Right now, Ms. Morris might be able to offer more definitive clarification on this, but I believe there is a plan to update the fees and charges bylaw every 6 months. So we could do it as often as every 6 months in line with updates to the fees and charges bylaw.
So I just want to clarify my question, I think, and thank you for that. That's the mechanism to update it, but how do we identify if we need to? So whether comparing revenues against what the expenses are, like or usage and so on, and that's how we achieve that was what we just heard about. But how are you identifying whether we need to do that or not going forward?
Through the chair, exactly as you said, we will, once we start having active chargers, we will monitor their usage and look into how much revenue was being brought in, and also the costs that our public works groups and contractors are taking, and then we can make adjustments as need be. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, Council? We have some recommendations here. I guess we can go, it's one that, and it'll look after the suite of changes that need. Oh, can you hear me now? Are we good? So make sure the audio is up for the stream. They can't hear us if we don't have the mics. We're good? Okay, great. Thank you. So, Council, we have the recommendation before us. Can be all done as one piece. So, is someone ready to move that? Councillor Pettingill, Councillor Stoner seconds. Would you speak to it, Councillor Pettingill?
Happy to support this. I did not support where I ended up in the paid parking, but a majority of council did. And this is just sort of following through on that with a number of other things. And, I do think there's some opportunity for delegation. And, I highlighted a couple areas that I'm interested in. We don't need to resolve tonight. But in terms of delegation, and can we make it a little easier to follow the school zone and make those areas a bit safer and so on, but maybe another discussion for another day. This is, good cleaning up and following up on a lot of things we've asked for. So happy to have this work done. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, Councillor Stoner?
Yeah, thank you. As unruly as the fees and charges bylaw is getting, this was fairly straightforward. Appreciate staff's work in clarifying where we're going with these projects and enabling previous direction that was presented by council to move some important projects forward. So looking forward to seeing how the pilot project goes and the nimbleness of learning from our neighbors on electric vehicle charging costs, and agree with my council colleague, Councillor Pettingill, around options for delegation going forward. Would be happy to see that, because I don't think these sorts of items need to come to council all the time. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments, Councillor Hamilton?
Yeah, thanks very much. Thanks for the work. Like Councillor Pettingill, as we had the discussion about particularly the speed limits, that's not my preferred direction. I don't think the 30-kilometer-an-hour speed limit in the downtown is really going to be achieving the goals we want to achieve in that, but I recognize that that was not council's prerogative, and given that it's right now part of a larger suite, I absolutely am happy to support this larger suite of bylaw changes. Regarding delegation of small charges, I would certainly look forward to delegating the responsibility for whether EV charging is $1.75 or $2 to staff. And the other thing, regarding the fees and charges bylaw, yes, opening a 222-page report was somewhat eye-opening until I realized that the vast majority of it was simply fees and charges. So thanks.
Thank you. Any other comments? Speaking in support of the motion, as others have said, this is really follow through on previous direction. My questions around the EV charging stations are really driven by wanting to know if this is good business, I think, to provide these, but is it a profit center? Are we subsidizing? Is it a break even? All I know so far is what the market rate is. So I'd really like to know more about that. And I think that can help guide future investments. Hopefully this is the sweet spot that more than covers the investment and will incentivize us to wade further into this area. I'm optimistic that's what we see, but I guess this is the starting point, and look forward to that future conversation around that piece. But the rest of it is pretty straightforward follow through for me. So happy to support. With that, I'll call the question. All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Let's do it. Well, I know we're near the end here. Let's just take a quick 5-minute break, and then we'll come back for finish off the rest of the agenda. So 5-minute recess. Thank you and welcome back. We're now on to adoptions. So as per our practice, we don't have any presentations here. These are just the I's have been dotted and the T's have been crossed on these pieces. So first we have, we need to do them individually. So first is the OCP plan amendment for the area, the Marine Center Area C from the oceanfront. Moved by Councillor French, second by Councillor Hamilton. All in favor? Any opposed? Councillor Pettingill opposes. Motion carries. Next is the phase development agreement for SANE. Actually, hold on a second. We can do these all. We can do these all together. So sorry, we did the first one by itself. Let's do the next two together. Sorry about that. I missed the note there. So I'll move the remaining two together. Second by Councillor Hamilton. All in favor? And opposed? Councillor Pettingill opposes. Motion carries. Thank you. So next we had staff reports on electric kick scooter pilot project. Do we have a? Maybe we moved too fast. Maybe we'll take another. We're ahead of. We're disorientingly ahead of schedule. So how about if it's okay with everyone, we'll move on through the rest of the agenda, and then we'll come back to this item in a couple minutes. I feel like Mr. Valniscus went to find the appropriate staff member for that report. So we had no late agenda items. We had no correspondence action requested. We had no items referred from the consent agenda. And so now we're on to business arising from the minutes. Any notice of motion? Okay, I'll refrain from asking about open question period, and we'll go back. We'll go to the scooter topic. So we're on to electric kick scooter pilot project.
Hello, Mayor and Council, and sorry for the slight delay. Brent McMurtry, Manager of Transportation, joined by David Ralston, the Acting Director of the Engineering Department. And tonight I'm presenting on the electric kick scooter pilot project agenda item. So to provide a little bit of background, the BC Motor Vehicle Act is the primary legislation for roads and traffic in British Columbia. And the Ministry of Transportation through the Motor Vehicle Act have initiated a pilot project to test the use of e-scooters on roads throughout the province for any municipality that opts into this pilot project. So this is the second iteration of e-scooter pilot project that extends till 2028. And e-scooters are not legal to be used on municipal roads or anything that could be defined as a highway in the Motor Vehicle Act in municipalities that haven't joined this pilot project and are only legal to be used on private property. So currently 26 municipalities in British Columbia have joined the pilot, and all that is required to join this pilot is a council resolution. It's a bit of information on what is entailed in this pilot. So the pilot project provides the regulation that is the legal framework for how e-scooters are, I guess, allowed to be used on district roads if we opt to join. So some of the information is users must be 16 years of age or older. No license or insurance is required. Only one rider at a time. Helmets are required. Scooters must have a headlight and taillight. Max speed of 25 kilometers an hour. No more than 500 watt power. They may not be ridden on crosswalks or sidewalks unless there's signage directing so. and must be ridden in the bike lane or the right-hand side of a vehicle lane. And for any road over 50 kilometers an hour, only are able to be ridden in bike lanes or dedicated infrastructure. Another piece of information of note is if there's any legislation that is not in line with local bylaws, the legislation in the pilot project supersedes anything in the local bylaw. So yeah, as I mentioned, we're not required to update our bylaws. And it is the staff's recommendation to proceed with the Motor Vehicle Act pilot project regulation alone. And if there are issues that arise, that they can be addressed during a future traffic bylaw update. Something that is on our maps is needing to be updated in the not too distant future. So with that, yeah, the recommendation is to approve the District of Squamish participating in the Province of BC's electric kick scooter pilot project beginning today. And the next steps, if council supports this recommendation, is that we would communicate to representatives from the Ministry of Transportation and be officially listed as a participating municipality. And then we would include communication material around e-scooter use in an upcoming micromobility communication campaign that's planned with our communications department. We've engaged the RCMP and we would continue to work with the RCMP to understand if there are issues that arise from this pilot project and look to make future traffic bylaw changes as needed. And with that, I'll move on to questions.
Thank you. Questions? Go ahead, Councillor Stoner.
If I remember correctly, e-bikes have an allowable speed of technically 30 kilometers an hour. Why would scooters only be 25? Appreciate that's provincial legislation, but curious if you have an answer.
Through the chair, yeah, you're correct. E-bikes are actually 32 kilometers an hour is the governed speed, and the information. So I attended an information event put on by MOTT about this pilot project, and they noted that they're looking to collect information, and there's some concerns the smaller wheel diameter leads to more risk associated with if there's damaged pavement or if there's debris on the roadway. So this is the other piece, is to ensure that there's providers that can comply with the legislation. And so typically the province isn't setting a standard that isn't aligned with other major jurisdictions. I can't speak to which major jurisdictions they are aligning with, but that was another rationale behind the legislation, the pilot legislation that's being tried out.
Thank you. Other questions? My question, I understand this is a pilot is about scooters, that's why we're talking about scooters, but broadly we heard a question about how that interacts with the e-bikes regulations, and is this tying that stuff together? Is that what that micromobility work and communications is about?
Through the chair. So yes, and understanding that as our transportation landscape is continuing to evolve and we see different mobility devices used by different people who have different needs and different objectives, we're trying to, this recommendation is to join legislation that allows community members to comply with our legislation and local bylaws and rules, which is a part of this. And then the micromobility communication is a part of helping to communicate and educate community members on safe ways to travel through our community, regardless of what mode they're choosing, and recognizing that there's different risks and different responsibilities that we want people to be aware of. So a component of that.
Okay, thank you. I think one of the things that I know that there's the e-bike regulation that we just talked about. There's this piece. We don't seem to have, as far as I know, a established speed limit on our multi-use paths, and I want to make sure that if we do arrive at that, we do that intentionally and not have an expectation of the community of that we haven't set. So how do you, in the pieces that were on municipal roads, that stuff all makes sense, but particularly on the multi-use paths, and I don't want to see speed traps on our multi-use paths, although I want to see people use them and be safe doing so, and having reasonable limits makes sense. But how do you see that enforcement happening there, or is that not a concern of staff at this point in time?
Through the chair, I think that enforcement of speed of these devices, that joining this sort of provides more clear direction for community users of what devices are legal and what devices are not legal, and provides a little bit of additional guidance and support for our RCMP members to actually enforce and to help people understand vehicles that shouldn't be using multi-use paths or streets and aren't really safe to operate. And so I think that this isn't directly dealing with setting speed limits on shared use facilities and considerations around that. But part of the rationale behind the province launching this pilot project is to gain information and understand what risks are introduced. And so there's some reporting that is sort of minor reporting that is a component of this, and the province is looking to gather information that will allow them to inform legislation as it moves forward.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Pettingill?
Yeah, I apologize if I missed hearing you speak to this, but what about other devices, like those one wheel things with the platform either side, or electric skateboards and all these other, is that all encapsulated under scooter, or is that illegal or in a gray area or to be determined? Or
through the chair, yes, the legislation is fairly restrictive of what a scooter is, and so those other micromobility devices wouldn't fall under this e-scooter regulation. When I met with representatives from the Ministry of Transportation, I asked those questions, and they said that similar to e-scooters have really been around for some time now and have been well used in the community for many years, as well as other communities throughout the world, that it takes time for the legislation to catch up to what the norms are. And so this is a bit of a stepwise approach that the province is taking. And so those other micromobility devices aren't captured within the Motor Vehicle Act or this legislation.
so does that mean they are disallowed until they are explicitly allowed, or they're just unregulated at this point? Or
so they would be the exact same as an e-scooter is today on our streets. They're not defined as a vehicle in the Motor Vehicle Act, and so they're not allowed to be on our streets. Our CMP members recognize that there's utility and value in people who are safely looking for alternative transportation devices. And so similar to the response around speeds, it's not a priority from my understanding to enforce vehicles that do not comply or align with the Motor Vehicle Act legislation, but they would have the ability to enforce those devices if they wanted to.
Thank you. Councillor Hamilton?
Yeah, thanks. This is actually just a point of clarity. I had the same question as Councillor Pettingill, which what is a scooter? And so in the BC, one of the BC government's brochures, it says an electric kick scooter. Electric kick scooters are battery powered motorized devices with 2 to 4 wheels. I've never seen one with 4 wheels, but that's fine. A platform for standing and handlebars for steering. So that would seem to preclude those one-wheeled things.
Okay, we have a recommendation here, Council, if we're ready to go there, or do we have more questions? Are you moving it? Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor French. You can speak to it.
Thanks very much for bringing this forward. Reflecting on this and reflecting on people using active transportation, pathways and roadways, it's quite clear to me that the thing that we need to designate is the speeds at which people travel in specific areas. And I think it seems to me like this 20 to 30 kilometers an hour is that space where maybe you could be on the road as long as you're off to the right and using it responsibly. You could be on a bike path. To me, it's not important whether you're on a scooter or running at, I don't know, running at 30 kilometers an hour. So fast, or on an analog powered bicycle. But the important thing is sort of how fast you're going. And I see the regulation here is trying to set a reasonable standard by regulating the device, as opposed to putting up speed limit traps and speed limit signs on all of our active transportation routes. So it seems like a logical and sensible path forward for me. Thanks.
Thank you. Other comments? Yeah, thank you to staff for bringing this forward. And I think it's always interesting to be on the leading edge of regulation, although the regulation in this case has taken a decade or so maybe to sort of catch up with the realities. So, but that's no fault of anyone here. So we're happy to support this going forward. Yeah, I'm curious where this goes from here and how it captures those other micro mobility pieces. But that's a conversation for another day. So this will move us in that direction. I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Okay, council, I had done the notice of motion. There was no notice of motion. Open question period, clarification related to agenda items. Is there anybody in the crowd, in the audience, that would like to ask a question of clarity? Seeing none, I'll go to councillor staff announcements. Any announcements? Go ahead.
Yeah, just a couple things. On the weekend, I went to the, I can't remember what it was called, but it was the sort of closing of the Squamish Community Music Festival, and some of the top performers were able to do another version of their performance at the Anglican Church. And I think I've said it in previous years, but we have such an incredibly talented community of singers and musicians, and one young man who'd written his own piano piece, which was quite amazing. Yeah, a lot of songs that I knew and was really quite enjoyed. And I think they said over 400 kids registered this year. Like, the numbers just keep growing and growing. So as a music person myself, it's really exciting to see, and the community support for it's been great. And then a couple other things of note, I guess. May 17th was the International Day Against Homophobia and Transphobia. And Sea to Sky Allies had a discussion at Gather Bookstore. Unfortunately, I was only able to attend for a little bit. A tidbit that just kind of blew me away is that it's recognizing May 17th in 1990, the World Health Organization declassified homosexuality as a mental disorder. So it's just 1990 that happened, which is mind-blowing. And so anyways, it reminded me that was the first Sea to Sky Allies event I'd had an opportunity to go to, but makes me want to go to more. It's just really good discussion and some good people. Learned something even in the short time I was there. And we're not going to have another council meeting before, but there is, and I think someone's mentioned, a big Pride Parade coming up June 1st. So I'm looking forward to that. Sort of falls in line with the last mention. And there's a whole bunch of other great events. Oh, I guess the Hike for Hospice is coming up the day before, also at Junction Park. So some really good events coming up a couple weeks from now.
Thank you. Any other updates? Councillor Greenlaw, then Stoner.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that over the weekend, I had the pleasure of checking out the new adaptive trail at Alice Lake, and it was super fun. It was a really nice ride. So we're looking forward to going back with more of our family members. And thank you so much to those who contributed to that work. I think it's going to be a really great community asset. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Stoner.
Yeah, thanks. Since our last meeting on May 7th, we had the formal launch of the Evolve Bike Share program, which is relevant given our recent discussions around micromobility options, and very excited to see that those bikes are out in the community, available. And even within the first few days, the folks at Evolve said that they were seeing really high ridership numbers, 150 folks in the first few days alone. So that's really exciting. And hopefully we can continue. I'm going to plant the seed that I saw that North Vancouver was able to get a BC Hydro grant to get 8 cargo bikes as part of their e-bike share fleet. And so that seems like maybe a next step for our program, but we'll wait and see how the first step goes. And then looking forward, this week is Happy Public Works Week. Thanks to everybody in our Public Works department. Sorry, I beat you to the punch. But looking forward, they're hosting a few events this week for staff in particular. Unfortunately, with the renovations, they can't do the Folsom event this year, but they look forward to opening their doors to the community, hopefully next year when there's a new facility. But just want to thank all those who work in Public Works for all they do for keeping our community going. This coming Saturday is the District of Squamish Kids Clothing, Toy, and Book Swap, which is always a great event, especially if you have young children. You can always find lots of good things. As Councillor Pettingill noted, June 1st is the Pride Parade, the first of its kind here in Squamish. So that's exciting for our community as a whole. And the Friday before, on the 30th, we will be raising the Pride flag here at the District of Squamish above Muni Hall around noon. So if folks want to join for that, it'd be great to have you.
Thank you. Any other updates? Some brief updates on the 7th. We had a youth council meeting, which was really a debrief from their successful event they ran just the week before. Also a discussion of preparation for the presentation they give us that we received here earlier today. So just a big shout out to the youth council members for all their work on the events and putting together the presentation that we saw earlier today, which if you're seeing these comments and want to see that, it's will be online as per our normal meetings there. I had an opportunity to attend a Rotary lunch where I had a great conversation with the Rotary Club members about all sorts of municipal issues, and it was great to see some of our I'd say longtime community residents there, and it was some great conversation. Looking ahead, next week I'll be Councillor French and I will be attending the Federation of Canadian Municipalities annual general meeting, and that takes place in Ottawa this year. And the conference theme is Stronger Together, Local Strength, National Prosperity. I think it'll be a really interesting time to spend time with our colleagues from around the country. So I'll report out on learnings from that upon my return. I think I'll leave it there for today. So we do not have a motion to close. We do not have any council or staff in camera announcements. So I'll be looking to, yes, go ahead, Councillor French.
Yeah, motion to terminate, Mayor Herford.
Thank you. I'll second that. All in favor?
This morning or this afternoon?
Motion carries unanimously. We'll discuss this next time. Thank you.